Hi folks, welcome back to the podcast. We've got a fantastic guest on this episode. Clark Adams' life started in Cardonald in Glasgow, to stay out of bother, joined the army as a young lad of 15, rose to the height of captain in rank, and then had an amazing journey through, first of all, for a short time, private security, and then into the Home Office, and a little bit of time looking after the courts in London as well. So a fascinating story. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, and have a seat, enjoy the podcast. So, Clark, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me up to your wonderful home here. In Montrose. Not the easiest place to find in the sat-nav. I don't know why. The building's obviously been here for a while, but sat-nav had me up and down your street a few times, and thanks for the hospitality in doing so. So, first, just start us from, where you were born, early life, maybe up to and including your school, first of all, Clark, and you can start your amazing journey.
Yeah, certainly. I was born in Glasgow and raised in Cardonald, and I went to Moss Park School and then Bellewson Academy. By about the age of 15, I was quite a big guy, 15, and I was beginning to get into a bit of trouble, and it looked like I was likely to, all my friends by this time virtually had a criminal record. They'd all been arrested for something, and I was at Bellewson, and I think I was the only Hearts supporter at Bellewson Academy. Bellewson Academy is the nearest school to Ibrox, and 99.5 of everyone at Bellewson Academy supports Rangers. Yeah. I mean, everyone knows who the one Celtic supporter is, or the one Falkirk supporter, or the one Hearts supporter. And I was the one Hearts supporter. And I always remember wanting to go to school one Monday morning, because on Saturday Rangers would beat Hearts 6-0. But anyway, my parents forced me to school. So yeah, I was the only Hearts supporter, I think, at Bellewson Academy.
I need to ask, how did that come about? How does a guy born in Cardonald become a supporter of Hearts?
I was brainwashed by my father. Okay. Because when my father was a lad in the 50s, Hearts were apparently a good team, and he became a Hearts supporter. So when I was growing up, I was brainwashed to support Hearts. Yeah. So when I went off to school, I thought everyone supported Hearts until I got to school and realised that wasn't the case.
And was your dad Glasgow born and bred?
My father was Glasgow born and bred as well, yeah.
Bizarre, isn't it?
But my grandparents came from Montrose, which is one of the reasons why I've retired here now, because I used to spend all my summer holidays here.
Yeah.
But my father was Glasgow born and bred.
So what was your school days like?
The school days were good. I thoroughly enjoyed primary school, Moss Park. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then when I went to Bellewson, it was quite a change, because there's about 4 or 5 different schools fed into Bellewson. So that was interesting. I had to get the bus to school or a cycle to school. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. But as I said, I was just beginning to get into trouble. Yeah. I also, every Saturday, I used to go to Cereal Square and get the Hearts supporters bus outside the Square Peg. So I used to go to all the Hearts games. And one game that sort of changed my life was Dumbarton versus Hearts. And back then, this was the 70s, when everyone scored the goal, a lot of the young lads used to run on the pitch. Yeah. I don't know if you remember that. Well, I was one of those young lads running on the pitch. And we played at Dumbarton, and we all ran on the pitch. Yeah, Hearts have scored, as you do, to try and get on TV, it was back then. And I ripped a corner flag off one of the posts.
Is that while the game's in go?
No, we ran on the pitch, someone had scored.
It's not after, the game was
during the match.
No, you kind of need the corner flag to...
Well, it was just a flag. No, I left the post.
That was nice of you.
And then the police arrested me. Yeah. Oh. And I think before I'd been thrown out the ground somewhere, for running on the pitch. But this time I got arrested and thrown in the back of a van and carted off to the police station. And I thought, oh my goodness, you're in trouble, lad, And there I was in the police station. This was about 6 o'clock at night by now, because you really think, oh my God, I'm really in trouble now. I'll have a police record. And I was planning to join the army then. And I thought, I'll never join the army, will refuse me now. And on the interview, I said, is this Dumbarton? He says, I says, my uncle works here. And they said, oh, really? What's his name? And I said, Jim Baxter. And he was a chief superintendent then.
Wow.
They said, Jim Baxter, he's your uncle? And I says, yeah. And lo and behold, a few phone calls were made. And next thing I knew, my father came and picked me up.
A slap.
with a slap around the back of the head, and I was whisked off home and told, right, no more Hearts games for you. You're off to the army, and you owe your Uncle Jim Baxter a drink or two.
Right.
So that was me. I was housebound after that, and then off to the army.
So how long was it between getting into bother at that game and turning up for your basic training?
I think that was about April, May time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was sort of not allowed to go to any more football matches. and then I joined the army in September of 72.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a 6-month window to get yourself prepped for it?
It was, yeah, but I think I'd done all the courses by then, so I'd signed up. But I was joining what's called the Army Apprentices College, which is basically like a boys' school. And the term started in September.
And where was it?
It was in Aberfield and Reading,
Mm-hmm.
so it was a long way away.
And this is still before your 16th birthday?
Yeah, before my 16th birthday.
Would that have been the first time you were away for any extended period from your parents?
Absolutely, yes.
So what was that experience like as a young lad away, shipped to Reading?
I remember quite clearly there was 4 of us from Glasgow. We all had to meet at Glasgow Central, and I think we met the police sergeant there who introduced us to the other 3 guys, and we got an overnight train together. There's 4 of us, and we all travelled down, and I think there was, when we got there, I think it was 260 of us, actually starting at the same time. So it was a very busy time, and at Aberfield there was 1,000 boys at the Army Apprentice College. So it was a very interesting time.
I mean, they say the apprentice college, what are you getting? You're obviously be a soldier first and foremost, but what other skills would you be at this college for?
Well, basically, we did trade training. So I was training to be a mechanical engineer, which I was. Mm-hmm. We did a City and Guilds in HND, and we got other guys who did mechanical engineering, and other guys who became aircraft technicians, fixing helicopters. Now,
that's not a normal introduction to the army. Okay, for just a kid getting into basic training. Was that because of the age of you, or was there sort of an academic level you'd achieved to get this separate type of training? What was the reason?
I think my parents had said, if you're going to join the army, because at that time it was Belfast was very much in the everyday news, and there was people, Scots going to Belfast and someone getting shot. And there was always a soldier getting shot, and my parents were very, very worried about that. Mm-hmm. So they said, if you're going to join the army, you have to get a trade. So therefore, that's why I went and joined the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers.
Remy,
rather than infantry. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've got a cousin who served in Remy, but he did end up in Belfast. It didn't work out the way Alan had planned.
Yeah, but he probably wasn't marching the streets with a gun. He'd have been in the background.
Yeah, apart from when he had to go out and he's told me some stories. I don't know if it would be wise to and it would be his decision to replay them or not. But for example, what's it called, the pig? If there's a pig broke down and it was in a sort of dubious place, they had to go out and get it. Correct. So although he was maybe not involved, and they did have a gun because he needed one, and some of the stories he told me about at the time. So that was your introduction, and how long was this part of your army career at the college?
I was there for 2 years, 2 and a bit years. Mm-hmm. It was 7 terms. It was 2.5 years there. Mm-hmm. And then after that, you sort of qualify and you go off to a unit. Now, I trained to be an A mechanic, which is basically fixing tanks. Mm-hmm. So there was not many tanks in Northern Ireland. So I was shipped off to Germany, and I joined, which I always remember was the senior regiment in the British Army. Okay. Do you know who that is?
No.
It's the lifeguards. You know when they have the trooping the colour. Yeah. There's the guys in the red things, and the ones in the blue. Mm-hmm. Well, the lifeguards are the ones in red, mm-hmm. and they were the first formed regiments. They are the senior regiment in the British Army.
And they have tanks.
Sorry.
And they have tanks.
And they have tanks. Yeah, the cavalry. You see, the cavalry. The cavalry emerged into charging with horses to charging with tanks.
Yeah. So when do you do your basic training then while you're doing this 2.5 year stint at college? Is that how it works?
Yeah, when I passed out at the Apprentice College, I've been quite lucky with getting senior people. We had the Duke of Edinburgh. Mm-hmm. He came to do a passing out, so I've got a picture with me as a young boy with the Duke of Edinburgh.
About 17 at the time then, I take it?
I was about 17, yeah. And the Duke of Edinburgh quite rightly said, you're soldiers first and technicians second. And that was always a thing that was drilled into us. We're soldiers first and technicians. So we did all the marching, we did all the shooting of guns, we did all the jumping over the assault courses and things and diving in the mud. We could do all that. So we're soldiers first and engineers second.
And off to Germany.
Off to Germany.
And that's again, so you'll be about 17 at this point.
Yeah.
Again, that must be quite a big thing. I mean, when between you're 15 and 17, are you based down in Reading almost, apart from when you're a wee bit of home visits, and then you're getting sent to a foreign country?
Yeah, and I went to Germany, and with being in Germany for about 4 or 5 weeks, the lifeguards were going to Canada. So I arrived in Germany, was there for about 3-4 weeks, and then we're off to Canada. There's a place called Bathurst in Canada. I think it's called the British Army Training Unit, whatever it is. It's in Canada. And the training area is bigger than Wales.
Stop it. So you're off to Canada. So this area in Canada, it just gives you some sort of sense of scope and scale. So they've got an area. Is this purely for British Army?
It was then, but I'm sure it's other armies as well.
Okay.
It's a huge training, and it's near Calgary. So remember we flew into Calgary, and it's called Bathurst, and it's still there.
Are the tanks already there?
Yeah.
And how did they get there?
They've been there for years, because what happens is as well as the lifeguards, there's other cavalry units, they go there and train.
So the vehicles are there just purely for training purposes. Your own tanks that you might need in a time of war, I take it they're still back at.
They're still back
HQ,
in. They were back in Detmold in Germany.
Yeah. Okay. So how long are you in Canada?
I think there for 6 weeks. And it was really interesting. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Here I am in Canada, being in. That was the first time I think I'd actually been in second time being in a plane, because I'd never really been in a plane, because I used to always holiday in Scotland or down south. So my first flight was to Germany, and the next flight
6
was
weeks
to
later,
Canada.
going to Canada.
And back then I didn't need a passport. You just use your army ID card. Yeah. So I never even had a passport. It was whenever you fly with the army, just show your ID card and you're on the plane.
Incredible. So you're out there doing. What are they training you for? Is it sort of cold weather training and stuff they're putting you through in Canada?
No, it's just basically because they can't really drive the tanks very much. Because later on, if I talk about my later army career, when I was a captain, I used to go around with the brigadier and the regimental sergeant major, and when we were on exercise, we had a budget for damage control.
Okay.
So when we did an exercise and we're driving the tanks through farms and whatever, we'd knock fences down and knock buildings down. And then the next morning, about 7 o'clock in the morning, I used to go around with the brigadier, as a captain, and we'd go around
with a notepad,
and work out how much damage we had done to farmers and everything else.
Wow.
And then we'd sort of do an analysis of how much damage it was. And really, the exercise sometimes would be for 5 days. But if there's too much damage, the brigadier would call the exercise off.
You're ruining the place.
Yes, we've ruined the budget for damage control.
Wow. And this is when you're in Germany?
This is in Germany.
So going to Canada makes sense.
So in Canada, we could drive out in the fields and we wouldn't knock down farmers' fields and knock down the fences and things.
Incredible.
So that's how the psychology of why you go to Canada.
It does make sense. Far cheaper.
It was, yeah.
Aye, and Mr. and Mrs. Schmidt's farm's not getting destroyed every couple of weeks when you decide to.
And I think what used to happen was the farmers would sort of knock down their own. They would hear your tanks come. They go, "Okay, we can knock that fence down."
Aye.
So they'd knock the fence down, and they were there at 6 o'clock in the morning, waving their,
look,
hey, look at this, this will cost so much to do it, So we had. Yeah, it was we could 2 vans, we'd drive around and do the damage control exercise first thing in the morning.
So, talk to us a bit about your career in the army, what you got up to there, and obviously you went up to quite a decent rank, and how that came about. And
well, I think I mentioned I was quite a fit guy, and I was one of the first over the assault, when we did the assault course, and in the army you got to do fitness tests and runs, and I was pretty fit, okay? And I think I mentioned that I used to enjoy playing football, but I used to get annoyed when I didn't get selected. So I played badminton at school, but when I joined the army, they taught me how to play squash. And I took to it very well. And I became very good, actually. I became the Army Junior Champion only within a year, 18 months of playing squash. Wow. I was the Army Junior Champion. Luckily, because we had some good players where I was in Aberfield. And then I played for the army team, and I got recognised. I was playing against Oxford and Cambridge. When you become a mechanical engineer, you leave as a craftsman, a private. But I thought, hang on, this is a bit silly. How can I get promoted quickly? So because I did a PTI's course, I became a physical training instructor.
Ah, right, okay.
And as a physical training instructor, you get 1 stripe. And then a year later, you get 2 stripes. So I was a corporal by the age of 19. So I went craftsman, lance corporal very, very quickly. And therefore I was quite a young corporal. And I got recognised. And because I was playing for the army, I was playing with majors, captains, colonels, brigadiers all the time. Yeah. And they said, Adam, have you ever considered applying for a commission? And when you applied for a commission, you had to get someone to sponsor you. And it was great because I was in the army squash team, and I easily got two colonels to say they would, give me a reference. So I went to a thing called Regular Commissions Board, and funnily enough, I knew lots of people who'd been there, and I went to Regular Commissions Board, and I got selected, and then I went off to Sandhurst to become an officer, and bang bang, it just went from there.
Now Sandhurst. Yeah. You've obviously been in the army for a few years, done your basic training, you know what being a soldier's all about. But when you get to Sandhurst, is there some guys that are coming in at that level that have got no experience?
Yeah.
Does that create friction, or how does that work?
I'd been through basic training before, so therefore I had all this shouting at me in the ears and do this, do that, and so I had all that. And then I was a corporal, quite a senior corporal, so I was shouting at people rather than them shouting at me. But luckily, when you go to Sandhurst, you're put in platoons, and there's probably about 13 a platoon, and there's quite a mixture. In my platoon, there was 2 ex-rankers, right? There's myself and a guy called Guy Elliott, who we got on very well because we were both the sort of same from up through. We were former corporals, and you also have 4 foreign students. Because one of the things that Sandhurst does, it takes foreign students from other countries who've been through their academies. And it just so happened in my platoon, we had a guy from Jamaica, with a guy from, you've caught me now, Thailand, Malaysia, we had one from, where was he from? Jordan, and one from somewhere else, which I can't remember. Oh yeah, one from Belize. So we had 4 guys.
And are we training them to come into the British Army, or are we training them to go back to their own country?
Well, what they do is they do the training in their company first.
Yep. And
if they're sort of their top boys, like we had another Jamaican boy there, and we had a guy from Saudi Arabia who were their top academy students from their academies, and they came, and they go back to their army. So basically, you get a lot of guys who become brigadiers and generals, and they'll have been through Sandhurst as well.
Yeah. So they're serving their own country again. So they're here just to help with their training and development and make them leaders.
Yep. Yeah.
Did you come across any of these guys further on in your life? You're laughing, so there's obviously a story there. Well,
there's a big story there.
Well, we touch that when we get to that time.
So there I am with 2 Jamaicans and a Belizean.
All right.
And I met all 3 of them later on when I was in the Foreign Office. Yeah.
Did you ever go to Belize with your training?
I did, yeah. Not with my training, but I went away with the Foreign Office later on.
I've spoke to some people who went to Belize in different, one in particular, he was RAF regiment, and he was like, just the worst place in the world.
I would not go on holiday there, no.
and he said that, when you've done your cold weather training, he says, I preferred that. He says, because you go into the Arctic Circle, see if it's cold, you put some more clothes on. Yeah. You can only take so many off.
Yeah, but you got to keep your uniform on.
And he said it was just the worst place in the world. So, how long are you at Sandhurst? How long does that take to get?
Well, basically, I went to a thing called the pre-Sandhurst course, because I was from Glasgow and had a Glasgow accent. Maybe it's softened now, but I went to a thing called the pre-Sandhurst course, with guys from Liverpool, Manchester,
No,
Southampton,
just to soften you up a bit.
to soften you up, and they call it a knife and fork course.
All right.
And it was one of the funniest things I've ever been to in my life, because I went in this course and we had to learn about history. And I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday, one day of the week, we used to go to London and we go to art galleries and
No way.
theatres. Yeah,
To give you some culture.
to give you some culture.
Lovely.
And then we go to an opera
No.
or the theatre that evening and come back to Beaconsfield. So that was, they don't do it anymore. And this was at a place called Beaconsfield, which used to be the army.
Is that just as you get into Oxfordshire?
Yeah, it's just off the M40.
Yeah, no.
I've been back there and it's all flattened and it's all houses now. But also they train all the foreign students English there. So what happened was some of the boys that were going to Sandhurst, let's say 20 or 30 foreign students, they were there at the same time learning English.
Well, you're learning to eat properly.
Well, we're learning how to use the knives and forks and what opera was like.
So how long does this take to do this
I was there
pre-prep
for
thing?
14 weeks.
Stop it.
I was there for 14 weeks.
I mean, right. I get Glasgow in the 60s and 70s might have been a sort of different place to where just now, but we weren't living in caves, right? So,
Because that's my birthplace and that's where my accent was from.
and did they try to de-accent you? So, I mean, 14 weeks. Could they maybe have, taken it down to about a fortnight or something?
Well, I think what happens with back then, the Army Apprentice College was I think it's 14 weeks, 14 weeks, 14 weeks, with a 3-week, 4-week gap, and that becomes 52 weeks of the year.
Yeah.
So Sandhurst was the same. Sandhurst was 14 weeks.
Wow.
So all the army was.
Right. It takes them as long, right, to teach a guy from Glasgow to use a knife and fork as it does to teach a soldier to be an officer. That's kind of incredible, is it not?
but I also had to go to the opera and the theatre as well.
Of course.
Yeah, it's quite funny. There used to be about 16 of us, and sometimes we go to the theatre or opera, and we had a captain. I've got to forget his name now, but he was the captain in charge of us. And sometimes we were really quite tired. We couldn't really be bothered watching opera or ballet or Swan Lake or something. Yeah. So sometimes I used to get there with a couple of other people, and the captain would be down there and we'd be in the row behind. We'd be just so tired. We'd just go to the theatre, the Swan Lake, and just fall asleep. And everyone around us was thinking, well, why are they paying £50 a ticket for Swan Lake and they're falling asleep? But, it just didn't float my boat. But yes, I've been to the...
Is that a process that's still in place?
No, they stopped it.
Aye, I can imagine it would not because...
Maybe I was interviewed some years ago and I told the same story, then they stopped it.
I thought that sounds like a waste of money. But I kind of get it that the foreign students come over, if they need to do a crash course in how to talk English, or how to listen and take orders in English.
But they didn't come to the theatre with us.
Were they posh enough?
They were posh enough.
Because it was some Jordanian prince's son that was coming.
Actually, we had a Saudi Arabian prince there.
Wow.
And I remember he said, "Oh, let's go to London tonight," and he got an embassy car sent for him.
Oh.
And it was a big limousine thing, and we were speeding down the M40 doing 90, and I said, "You're doing 90? It's okay, it's diplomatic."
You ain't getting stopped with these plates on.
It was quite good mixing with these guys, yeah.
And you, a Liverpudlian and a Mancunian?
Me, a Liverpudlian and Mancunian, and a guy from Southampton.
He's just sitting with the royalty, as you do, down the motorway at 90 mile an hour with the diplomatic plates. Yeah. So what age are you now? You're early 20s now?
I'm about 23 now, 22, 23.
Wow. Yeah. So you do... I'm trying to think of a way to put this. Your class training by the sounds of it, right? Yeah. And then you do your officer training, and both those courses the same amount of time. Which course taught you the most?
Actually, I enjoyed Beaconsfield because it was kind of a wind down. Because at Beaconsfield I was an officer cadet then, I wasn't a corporal anymore. So we had a sergeant major who used to shout at us and teach us a bit of drill. And funnily enough, most people that go to Sandhurst have done drill before. So you get guys who join the guards before the guards send someone to Sandhurst, rather than make a fool of themselves. And they do pre-training with the guards down at Perbright or wherever. So most people that go to Sandhurst have done some pre-military training to get them in the zone. So when we're taught how to march, most of us kind of know how to march, and it goes from there.
So, I mean, we all hear these stories about SAS training and all that, and there's a sort of attrition rate and that, sorry. Could you fail any of these two courses?
You could, yeah. We actually get people who fail, but what happens? They get back squadded. So my my friend Guy and I, who were both the same ex-rankers, our number one objective was not to get injured and not get back squadded. So we did football things, and I get selected for the academy football team. And I says, no, I can't, because I play for the squash team. And I didn't want to play football because I didn't want to get injured, because if I got a damaged leg, I had to go back and do another term. I just didn't want that. So I ducked out that one quickly and just played squash for the Sandhurst. Yeah.
So when you get to Sandhurst, I take it you don't need to go to the opera anymore, right?
I can now talk about the opera.
Of course. And so what does his training involve at Sandhurst?
Sandhurst, the motto is serve to lead. So they're training you to be leaders. So most guys, when they leave Sandhurst, they become what's called a second lieutenant. And then they go out to a regiment and they're in charge of a platoon of, say, 15 guys. So they are the platoon commander.
Do
you remember Soldier, didn't you watch Soldier?
Aye. But I was never very good at getting that. See, the rank, I kind of get, somebody says major, you go, well, that's kind of high up, right? So I understand, and corporals maybe not so high up, right? But I couldn't list all
Well, Garvey, if you remember Garvey, he was a corporal. And they had a number of second lieutenants who were just fresh out of Sandhurst in charge of these guys who'd been in the army, say, 9 years or something, And you get a second lieutenant, and they normally get a sergeant. And the sergeant's sort of in charge of the platoon, but he's just looking after the lieutenant, who does all the orders and all the writing, and the sergeant does all the shouting, basically. So you serve to lead. And if you watch, Soldier's quite good. I've been watching it recently again, and to reminding me. And you find that back then, the sergeant is really in charge of the platoon. But he manages the second lieutenant.
He manages up the way.
And in years to come, the sergeant is then the regimental sergeant major, and the platoon commander is the colonel. So there's always that, they move up together. There's always that, so they know the routine, and that's the way it goes. So most of the people there, when I was there, were all going to be second lieutenants. But because I'd serviced before, I became a lieutenant, and then within, I think it was 18 months, I was a captain. So I was on fast track then.
When you come out of Sandhurst, where'd you go next? Do you go back to your original regiment again, or you can end up anywhere?
No, I was in the logistics corps. And I went straight to Germany. I went to be as a lieutenant for, I think, about 9 months. And then I was a captain, because I did courses and got fast tracked. Because basically they wanted to get me back on the same track as the other guys my age. Because by this time I was about 25, 26, and guys of 25, 26 who'd been in the army for so many years were going to be were captains, and I got fast tracked to be a captain.
Although you're still relatively young, you've got 10 years experience behind you at this point.
Sort of. They only really call it from your 21st birthday.
Is that right?
So when it came to pensionable age, although I'd been in the army when I was 15, technically as a soldier you don't really class your pensionable age till you're 18.
Okay.
So when I left at 17, I couldn't go to Northern Ireland because I wasn't 18. You can't go into, back then, you couldn't go into a war zone, and Belfast was a war zone. So you weren't allowed to go there until your 18th birthday. Not that I was going to go there, but if I had, my regiment was going there, I wasn't going. I had to wait behind. So for soldiers it's 18, for officers it's 21.
And they don't count you? They don't really count your service from 15 up to 18 then?
No. I think I got, when I became an officer, I think they gave me some money. So when I left, they gave me some money to sort of recompense the 18 to 21. But technically my officer service commenced when I was 21.
Incredible. And you're off back to Germany?
Yes, I was. Yeah,
And
yeah.
what regiment is this now?
I was in the Royal Logistics Corps, but then it was called the Royal Army Ordnance Corps, but it
Okay.
changed its name later
Yeah.
on.
And were you based in Germany from then on in, or was there much more?
Yes, I was two postings in Germany,
Mhm.
and I was at an ammunition depot, and we had, gosh, I can't remember what it was now. I think it was, gosh, it was a huge, maybe it was a huge area where we had an ammunition depot, and it was called Depot 90, and it was formerly a German ammunition depot. And if you flew over it in a plane, you didn't know it was there.
Is that right?
Yeah, because all the bunkers, the trees, and some of the trees on the bunkers were actually of a different type of tree, so they all grew to the same height. This Depot 90, when the Americans, or whoever it was, took over, they sort of drove past Paderborn, moved past with tanks and things. And as they were sort of 2 miles down the road, they heard all this banging behind them. I thought, what's all that?
What did we miss?
What did we miss?
Wow.
And they went back and they found it in the woods.
Went past it, clean past it.
Clean past it, yeah.
And it was a big place.
It was. Gosh, I forget how many acres we had. I was going to give you a figure there, but it was like a huge farm. It was a forest, and we were in there. But as time went by, we chopped back some so we could create some, get some land. But yes, all the bunkers were.
The Yanks missed it.
We missed it.
Was that because it was so well hidden, or is that because they're maybe not as good soldiers?
The whole idea, it was they'd be hidden. It's just like when we went exercise, we go into woods and we put, tarpaulins and things, so if someone flew over, they wouldn't see us.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the Germans did back then.
You can imagine, but from the air, camouflaging is one thing, but for you to be a ground troop and go past it is...
Well, you wouldn't really go into a wood, would you? There's a wood, let's go round it.
Aye, you would take the easiest route. Yeah. So, what age were you when your army career came to a halt?
Well, probably the reason I left the army is I was in Germany, which was the ammunition depot, and then I came back to UK, and I was in charge. Then I was a training officer with the TA, and I met the mother of my children, my ex-wife, and she was earning a lot more than me.
And what's her job at the time?
She was in marketing. And if you heard of Saatchi and Saatchi, was another company which the rivals was a company called FKB.
Okay.
And she actually helped launch Air Miles back in the day.
Wow.
So she was one of the leads launching the Air Miles project.
And you met her when you came back to the UK?
She was a TA officer. So I met her when I came back to UK, yeah.
So she's doing the marketing job, and the TA officer's obviously...
Yeah. She's a weekend warrior.
Okay. Yeah. And you are now... What's your role at the time then at TA?
I was captain, she was lieutenant.
And you're there full-time though?
I was there full-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she's got this cracking job Monday to Friday, and for some bizarre reason wants to be a weekend soldier.
Well, they only have to do, I think it's like 4 weekends a year in a week's camp, and they get a bursary of about £2,000, which is and they get paid.
Yeah.
But she did this while she's at university, because at university, if you become a potential TA officer, you do a TA thing, you get imagine being at university and they give you £1,000, for going away for a week.
Yeah, I'll have a bit of that.
You have a bit of that. So she did it at university and then continued it from there.
Wow. Yeah. Fair play to her, because I mean, if she's served her, its purpose, it was obviously help her fun. She might have had an inclination it would be good to do, or she wouldn't have done it. But then obviously she's in a successful career, working for a successful company, and still keep that TA thing going.
She did. She kind of dropped it. I think I could say that she joined the TA to find a man. Who knows? I'm sure if you interview it, she'll probably say that.
Tick, success.
Once she got me, she left the TA.
Right, okay. So, and what age are you at this point when you meet your...
I'm 51.
Yeah.
And that's when I came out of the army.
Okay.
I was at the stage where I'd done a thing in the army called the junior division of the staff college. And you do that and then you go on. And by that time, I'd met her and I thought, hang on, this is the army. I loved the army, but I really wasn't army-barmy. I remember doing staff college, junior division staff college, and guys were reading books about Napoleon strategies and this and tank commanders. I thought that wasn't my thing. I just really didn't get on. And people were writing books about the history of the regiment, and that wasn't me. So it was time to leave.
And you told me something before when we were chatting about nuclear arms and stuff like that. What part of your career were you involved with the
delivery means?
Yeah,
when we talked about the Depot 90.
Yeah.
At Depot 90, because we were part of NATO, our exercises, our major exercises each year was to meet up with the Americans, because we held the nuclear delivery means for NATO.
Okay.
Which basically mean we had the rockets, basically, and they had the warheads. So basically neither UK nor America could start a war on behalf of NATO. We had to be together. So our exercises were meeting up once a year with the Americans. We'd bring our nuclear delivery means, and they would bring their warheads, and sort of screw them on, not quite screw them on, but we'd go through the process. And but they would just actually bring dummies, and I think we brought dummies as well. We never actually fired them, but we just went through the process, and that was that.
So in a real world situation, NATO decide they're going to fire a rocket at Russia. I think that would be a great idea, but and it's decided that your stuff's going to be deployed and fired. So the Yanks need to meet up. Where is your stuff? Your stuff's in Germany.
Our stuff's in Germany.
And is American stuff in Germany, just in a different place?
Yeah.
Right, so it's not as if we need to get stuff coming from New York. And then how is it delivered? Was it fired out a land thing or a bunker?
It's a mobile vehicle. Yeah,
right?
But what we do in period of tension, one of our exercises in period of tension was to move out our depot, because obviously the Russians knew where our depot was, and obviously they'd have a little button to press to take our depot out. No depot. So in periods of tension, we had to move out. So one of my jobs was to go and recce to find locations where we'd move to. So I remember I was I mentioned about the brigadier and so basically my job was to go out, and we had lots of locations that we'd done deals with the farmers. So I remember one of our locations was a large milk factory. So in the event of a war, we were moving our stuff in different locations, because we have about 10 locations. So if the blew one up, there's still 9 more to go. So we moved all our ammunition out to about 10 locations, and one such thing was a milk factory, which they flew over. It's a milk factory, So we were in those locations. Yeah,
incredible. Now, how big is a nuclear warhead?
I can't remember, to be honest.
It's the size of a car.
About that. It's not huge. Yeah.
Now, so this is at one place in Germany. You're in Bunker 90, right? Depot 90. How many, and without giving away any trade secrets here, I just find the subject really interesting. So let's take Germany at that time, and I know things have changed now, so we're not going to give any secrets away. But how many different places would we have in Germany that were able to deploy nuclear weapons?
Not many, probably about 3.
But here's the go. Now, if the 3 are ran under the same plan, that means there must be about 30 places that we were ready to go at time of pressure, time of tension. That's nuts. Now, see the guy that owns the milk factory? Is he totally aware of what's going on here?
I think he is, because we had, he is, right? And he's 1, but we've got 9 more.
You've got 9 more, but there's another 3. There's 29 more when you think of it.
But it was my job to find those locations.
But there's another guy in the other 2 doing the same job as you.
He is,
incredible.
But Germany's a big country,
Yeah. So you've got an arrangement, right? What are these people signing up for? Are they going, you can bring your nuclear warheads here if things get a bit tight?
We didn't have the nuclear warheads, and we didn't tell them that. The Americans had nuclear warheads. We had the delivery means.
Right, so what do these people think they're getting?
Well, maybe I can't remember if we actually told them, well, by the way, it's a nuclear,
Aye, I can't imagine they get 9, 10 folks saying yes to that.
Well, no, what we did actually have, we also had all the ammunition for the tanks, because there'd be tanks as well.
Which they might be more comfortable under that agreement.
Yeah, so we had pallets. Most of our stuff was on pallets.
Yeah.
So what they'd have seen is us moving pallets around. And quite frankly, I don't really think we used the proper ammunition back then. I think we had pallets with empty boxes. Because normally when you go on a range, you got a big box of, 9mm rounds or 7.62 rounds. And then when it's empty, you got the box, a metal box. So most of our pallets, as we practice moving the pallets around with forklift trucks,
I've not got live ammo on it.
not really got live ammo in it. But they're simulated. That's right, it's called SIMO, that's right. It's called SIMO, simulated ammunition, yeah. So we moved all the SIMO around rather than...
Aye, so I take it you practiced this a fair amount of time. So it'd be like, well, let's pretend that the Russians are coming.
Yeah, we've got to move out the
we need
depot.
to empty this depot and we're going to go to the chicken factory this week, right? Or whatever, right? Because it must have been an amazing array of things. So quite a lot of the times you'll be doing it and it's just for practice. Yeah. So if it's an empty box or a full box, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's a pallet, we're moving pallets.
Yeah, we're practicing the logistics of the whole operation.
Yeah.
Was there ever any times where it was done for real?
We probably took some ammunition out because obviously what we were doing a simulate. That was our part of the exercise.
So what I'm saying is, was there any times where you were doing it for real and it wasn't a simulation?
No. Once or twice we went to the Americans and we didn't do the big exercise, but we just went through the process of we go to the American depot. With our delivery means, and we actually make sure it still fits.
These work.
Still screws on.
Yeah.
So we did do that probably once a year, but we didn't go out into the, the whatever,
Now, see, at your level, would you know that that's a kid? Well, you would, because the boxes are empty. But were you ever in a situation where it was a real, and it wasn't an exercise? It was about things, so it was never that close.
It was never that close, but I think at least once a year from memory, we had to go to the American depot and practice the process of arriving at the depot. Because I think the process was we would go to the depot, the missile, the warhead would go on our delivery means, and we'd have a team of people with the American team of people, and they'd go off to where they're told to deploy to.
It's amazing. So you're practicing a theory that could become needed at a time of high tension and potentially war. Now, see if it was to have kicked off and you were to do what you were trained to do. Do you fire one rocket, or is it like there's 20?
It would be quite a way down the road, okay? Yeah. Because if the strategies back then were, it was mainly our front line, the Russian front, if you remember that years ago. We were mainly supplying, initially we're mainly supplying the tanks and the artillery.
So your main route is not nuclear deterrent, your main route, your main job and role.
So we probably had probably 10 to 15% of our stock holdings was in nuclear delivery means. The other 85 was for the tanks and the artillery.
Got you. Aye. So your regiment is not a nuclear force as such.
No, it's
main
not.
objective as a cavalry part.
We were simply logistics. Yeah. So we weren't the ones pressing the button. We were just providing it.
Yeah.
And running away again.
Aye. Back to bunker 90 if it's not blowing up. That's incredible. So you the end of your army career was spent back in the UK.
Yeah.
And whereabouts was that?
Deep Cut in Camberley.
How do I know where that is? I can't picture it.
Because a couple of people shot themselves there some time ago. There was some soldiers walked into it and shot themselves, yeah.
That's true.
I think there was 3 of them actually. But that was...
There was inquiry about that whole thing, wasn't there?
It was, but that was after I'd left, so I'm quite pleased to say I wasn't there. Nothing to do with me. But some of my friends were there when it happened. Yeah.
I remember the inquiry about it, because they weren't all the same day. It was over a period of time.
I think they were being bullied and harassed.
Because it was a training?
There it was a depot, it was a training depot as well.
Yeah. And it was guys that were getting trained, wasn't it? And it was suggesting it was...
I think what happened was they got recruits, and they used to put recruits in they were probably in 14 weeks of military training there. And probably about week 7 or 8, they were given a gun and some bullets and told to stand out the front.
Incredible. Now, this is something that you as a, and it's don't mean this in a derogatory way, but we're all getting older. You're an old time soldier.
Yeah.
Now, the training that you got, both I would imagine at your basic training and in Sandhurst, if you were to go through the same process today, I would kind of imagine it'd be slightly different. It wouldn't be as... How does that make you feel? I mean, you would have been put through some proper training. right? Which might have been demeaning, might have been tough, might have been abusive and all that, but it was designed to make you a soldier. When we're not doing that today, does that give us a better army or not?
I think the training has all been condensed now. I mean, gosh, when I was at the Apprentice College, it was 2.5 years. I was at Sandhurst, it was a year. And I think now they sort of churn them out in 10 weeks, you know. I think I've got a friend here in Montrose, his son's about to go off and join, and they go to Catterick in Yorkshire. And I think it's a 10-week training session there. And after 10 weeks, I've done all the training and, you know, how to fire a gun, how to march and everything else. They're off to join their unit. So the training's been condensed. And to be perfectly honest, we did spend a lot of time, you know, a lot of wasted time, really.
Okay. So you could have got the same quality of training in that less time.
I think the training probably now is more condensed and more technical than it was back then. Yeah.
Aye, interesting. So this is another thing that's quite topical because it's been discussed recently, and the thing that concerns me is that it seems to be, let's blame Russia for this conversation, but I don't see it as blame Russia. I think it might be an internal reason, not an external reason. Where there's suggestions being made that we should start, what do you call it again? Thing with service.
Oh yeah, conscription or whatever it was, national service. Yeah.
Now, I deal with children a lot in my volunteer capacity, and although I'm not suggesting for 1 minute kids are not good kids, there's a lot of good kids out there, and I think sometimes when we talk about what I'm about to talk about, people can think that that's widespread. It's not universal, but there is a lot of kids that come into the category that I feel respect and these things just it's not the same as it was 10 years ago, never mind 30 years ago, mind 40 years ago when I was their age. And I never went in the army. I think if I lived my life again, it's something that I would have probably looked at. I've got a lot of respect for people who have served in any of the armed forces. I've got a lot of family members, my grandfather, Royal Navy, cousins, etc., Army, cousins, Air Force. I've got a lot of respect for armed forces. And I think if national service was a thing when I was a kid, I would have signed up. You need the option of signing up, but I would have went willingly and quite happy to do so. So a big part of me regrets that I never done any service at all. However, what's your feelings on that being an option and good nor bad?
I think to be fair, when I was in the army, we had a TA, and we used to do exercise with the TA, and we didn't really treat them with respect because they were, I mentioned a comment, weekend warriors or part-time soldiers. And I think if someone was doing national service and they were only going to do it for a year or 2 years, they wouldn't quite get the respect of other people.
Okay.
Would it work? It'd be good if this was a funnel. You know, if you join national service with the option to stay on, maybe that would be better rather than saying someone's doing national service, they get 9 months and after 9 months or a year, then the back of the street. Because it'd be kind of a waste of time, really. Training them, you know, giving them all that training, giving them all that uniform, you know, so it'd be kind of a waste of money.
I think it's only creating cannon fodder.
It is, yeah.
Because you're trained soldier, you're full-time career soldier. If we were trigging trenches again, and you're the guy at the top of the tree, and you've got 200 guys, you've got 100 that are national service and 100 that they're quite good at this game. Common sense tells you they're going first, right? So I think, you're right, it's probably just create cannon fodder. But there's two questions then. Would it give us a better armed force? Possibly not.
No.
Would it give us a better society?
It'd probably give us a better society, but there'd be a big cost involved. And as time's gone on, I've realised that things are all about money. And it would seem quite a waste to take someone. I mean, the armed forces could probably tell you now that to take a soldier and train him, it costs them, let's say, well, I remember I was in the prison side, it used to cost us 45,000 a year to keep someone in jail.
Yeah.
Okay, so to keep someone in the army and train them, what does that cost? There's probably a sum, maybe it's 30,000 or 40,000 a year to take someone off the street, put them through all that training and pay them and whatever, and then they leave after 9 months. It's a waste of money.
Well, I actually get concerned. I'm quite an inquisitive character, and when I see something, I'm not saying I distrust everything I read and I see, but I always take it at face value and think, is there anything behind that? So when we started hearing more people talking about conscription and national service, I'm going, why? Now, the only logical thing was, well, we might need it for the UN against Russia. And I'm thinking, well, I'm no military expert here, but if we do have a war with Russia, I'm kind of not thinking it'll be ground. Right, so we can discount that nonsense. So if there is a call to raise our foot soldiers in the army right now, by a lot of people high up the food chain, what is the real reason? Is there an internal risk that could require a ground force and people in the streets?
I don't think so, but if we do that, it's going to cost money. You look at the police; they're always talking about cutting back, because the police budgets are expensive. The army budget would be the same, so it's going to be a very a politician who's got a lot of clout at the treasury to increase the armed forces.
Yeah, it's the why though. That's the thing. Maybe I'm too inquisitive and I'd like to think I'm not, but verging on almost conspiracy theories that you question everything. And I think, well, why has this suddenly became a topic? Why in 2024, in the tail end of 2023, are people now getting discussed on news nights, etc., about do we need more ground troops? And the justification is Russia. And as I say, I just go, that's no black and white. That doesn't make sense to me. So is there something behind that? And the only reason I can think of that we would possibly need soldiers on the ground is if there was internal issues. I mean, France ain't going to invade us. Norway ain't going to invade us. We don't have any land border
rights in the street.
Potential. Is there things going on that people who are strategists are considering could be a threat to national security that might be within, and is that why?
I've not heard that. Have you? Is there something I've not heard recently about potential conscription and national service?
Yeah, it's been chat. Yeah, probably pre-Christmas anyway.
Was it okay?
And there was MPs talking about it, and then you would get the usual follow-up. Maybe Sky News would get an ex-sergeant major in and ask them questions about it, right? And I'm just sitting going, that doesn't make sense. And the justifiable reason was if the UN had a war with Russia. And I'm thinking, that ain't getting fought door to door.
No.
That's getting dealt with buttons and remote control joysticks.
Exactly.
Right? And probably two presses of buttons, and we don't need to worry about it anyway, because it's game over. So it's a score draw, and there's nobody left.
And it's all about one of the things that ruined the career of our colonels in the army when they were in charge of a regiment is if they lost a soldier.
Is that right?
Oh God, yeah. So we had a situation that regiments would go on exercise, would go to Belfast, and the whole idea was going there and bringing them all home. So what you've just described, they don't want situations where soldiers are going to the Ukraine front and then getting killed and coming back again. They just
going with 100 and come back with 75 is a bad thing.
Very bad thing. Even coming back without one.
Is that right?
Yeah, the press on soldiers being, well, we talked about deep cut a minute ago, but it's really a hard, we don't want. Well, when I was there back in the day, was going to Belfast. If you lost someone, you came back, they'd look at the colonel and is he going anywhere else, or it was like that,
So the sort of strategies of the song will never happen again.
Absolutely not. No.
Incredible. Yeah. So you were fortunate enough in your time when you were serving in the army. Probably I would imagine the toughest deployment at that time could have been Northern Ireland. And you were fortunate just because of we didn't have tanks in Northern Ireland, we had armoured personnel carriers, etc. So your regiment, fortunately enough, touchwood, wasn't required. So we've came out of you're in back in the TA job, you meet your future wife, and then you decide I'm not going to be a soldier anymore. What happens next? So what happens next?
Well, basically, I had to give, I think it was 7 months' notice to leave the army. You have to, you can't just leave, like give you notice and leave in a month's time. I had to give 7 months. So I gave 7 months notice. Then I applied, and actually I get picked up because I was in distribution. I was in logistics corps. I got a job as the regional manager for Group 4 night speed it was at the time. Then from the Group 4 night speed, I then got another job, which I was the general manager for London, the distribution for CityLink. There used to be yellow vans back in the day. But my job then with CityLink was to amalgamate the depots and close them down and make one big depot. So I didn't really enjoy that because I was making a lot of people redundant, which was quite a shock. You know, when you sit down with guys who were, you know, I don't know, gosh, I'm younger than me now, but they were sort of late 50s. And they were working in a warehouse and they would be made redundant and they probably would never get another job.
Yeah, they've been there 30 years and you know,
and I know
when you're talking to them.
Talking to them because we were changing our logistics strategy. So it kind of got to me, you know, making all those people redundant. And gosh, I lost track of the number of people I made redundant, which really gets you.
Yeah, imagine.
You know, because when you sit opposite someone and you know that they're never getting a job, they're going to be in a dole at the age of 50, 56, 57. They've got 8 years of unemployment basically ahead of them. So that was very difficult for me. So then I actually I changed tact and I got a job with it's actually called the Lord Chancellor's Department, which was Lord Chancellor's Department was part of the Home Office. Yeah, no, part of the it's called the Lord Chancellor's Department, which then became the Court Services. So I then became responsible for the contracts and the management of the magistrates' courts in London.
But a few of them.
Well, there was actually, initially it was called the Inner London Magistrates Court Service. So there was about 13 or 14. And then it became the JLMCA, the Greater London Magistrates Courts Authority. And there's like 30 odd courts. And it was my job to look after the gardening contracts for those and to do inspections of those courts. Back then we were having a lot we called runners. That's when, you know, someone way up in the dock and they said, "We found you guilty."
No, I'm not.
And then it was, hang on a minute, this is my last chance before I go back down the stairs to the cell. So they were doing runners. So back then I was responsible for putting in what's called secure docks. And we put these docks in that were, you know, quite high. But even still, we got runners jumping over them. So you had to have secure docks to the roof so they couldn't make a runner. And then you had to have special systems with microphones so they could hear and they weren't being, you know, denied hearing what's going on outside the court. So it's an interesting time. So each court had 3 areas. Don't know if you know this, but a court's got 3 areas.
Go on.
It's a public area. No, there's 4 areas. There's a public area where the public go in, and there's all these doors that the public only go so far. And then you've got the cell area, right, where you go in a different door and they bring them from the cells and they come up and they're in the courtroom. The cell area, and then there's the staff area, which is also where the magistrates or judges are. So there's 3 different areas in a court, and you know those are quite clearly defined.
They shouldn't cross.
They shouldn't cross. And obviously the staff who are going from the public area into the other area, there's airlocks, so if someone breaks in or follows you, they can't go anywhere else. So we had to make sure that all those airlocks worked, and there's even airlocks down in the cells. We had situations where the last man locking the cells would get locked in an airlock and things like that. So one of the interesting courts back then was Belmarsh. And Belmarsh is where they used to deal with all the terrorists. And Belmarsh is Belmarsh Prison, and there's Belmarsh Court, and they'd come through a tunnel from the prison up into the dock basically. So that was very interesting. But all the other courts, they were all moved around in vans.
So was Belmarsh purpose built then because of the high level that they would be in there? And so there was no, you're not going to make it 0, but you're mitigating the opportunity of somebody escaping through a van, get sent to London, van getting smashed, folk getting pulled out.
All these sort of high risk people would go to Belmarsh Prison, and they'd be dealt with at Belmarsh. Well, first when someone gets arrested, they have to go to a magistrate's court first. You go to the magistrates court and it's remanded for Crown Court.
Yeah.
So at Belmarsh, you could go into the magistrates court, remanded back down the tunnel, along the tunnel, up the other one, and into the Crown Court. So that was the interesting one. And Belmarsh is quite near Woolwich in London. Yeah.
Nice part of the world. Woolwich is, I'm not saying Belmarsh.
Yeah. So we'd all the courts back then, and it was interesting.
So you ended up coming out the military and ending up in the Foreign Office and the diplomatic services. How did that come about?
Well, basically, I was in charge of the security for all the courts in London, and it kind of frustrated me a bit because we didn't have a budget for security, and you're probably embarrassed now, but we would have a security arch. Sometimes our security arches would break down.
What do you mean a security arch?
You know when you go into a magistrate's court, you've obviously been in a few times, haven't you?
No, fortunately not. I've been to court in a public gallery, I think, twice in my life, but fortunately I've never sat in a dock.
Anyway, if you were going to a court, it's like an airport. You go through the security arch, you get your coins out and put them there. And we used to have we'd often find people with big screwdrivers down the back, and you'd say, "What's your?" "Oh, I'm a joiner." So we used to get all these amazing things and just take them off the individuals that come into court. But you used to get that all the time. And also we had situations in court where we had it's quite funny. You get the home and the away team in the same area. Yes. The guy who's up against to give evidence against you. And you're sitting beside you. So we sort of developed from that and how we got vulnerable witnesses in a different door, and so it was interesting times back then. Yeah. But again, you're the home and the away team. Can you imagine Rangers and Celtic supporters in the same area?
Yeah, crazy. So how did you end up going into the diplomatic services?
Well, I saw an advert that was there, and I remember going to a presentation, and they were saying that security is our number one thing. And budgets were there to get things done, and I thought, God, that's
be nice. Having money.
I was struggling getting a security arch filled, fixed or repaired or whatever, and we had to sort of use wands, and so it was a little frustrating. We didn't. Oh, it's not very important. We don't. Why do we need to do this? And here's the list of the stuff we took off the guys last week. So this is what I got in the Foreign Office, and it was just that. I mean, if I'll give you an example. For example, when I was in South Sudan. Juba, we had riots there, and just what happened, they said, "How many armoured vehicles have you got there?" Because to move around it became dangerous, so we needed to have bulletproof vehicles to move around. And this happened on a Saturday. "How many armoured vehicles have you got there?" "We don't have any." "What?" So this was a Monday morning meeting, and by Thursday we had 3, right, from UK into South Sudan, flown out, in the back of a vehicle, flown out. And we had 3 armoured vehicles so we could drive around in the sensitive areas of South Sudan.
So why did they not have any before? Was that just poor management, or had the situation changed that it went from sort of low, medium risk to high risk?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because in lots of countries we don't have armoured vehicles. In certain countries we do. It all depends on the risk element.
Yeah.
I could probably pick somewhere where we don't have armoured vehicles, and we didn't have them in South Sudan, because we didn't regard that as being an area of concern.
Yep.
But South Sudan got independence, and the 2 leaders of opposite tribes, as they were then, I forget what they're called now, Dinkas and something else, to get stability. They had this sort of the rival companies, like there's like a Conservative and Labour equivalent in charge of the country, but then they fell out, and there was fighting in the streets, bullets flying, so it went, and that happens in quite a few countries. I can think of a few where it's happened and where it will probably happen again.
So, just thinking there, you were in the army for 15 up to...
Call it 15, 16 years.
Right, so, and you've been very fortunate, just by nature of your specialist subjects. Is it fair to say you've probably seen more scary situations in the diplomatic service then than in your whole time in the army?
I've probably been in more dodgier places. I mean, in the Foreign Office, I've been to 38 countries, right? And of those 38, there's probably only 8 I want to go back to.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, how long was your whole Foreign Office career then? Is that
17 years.
right? So we're almost eaksy peaksy, but you know. So
50.
what defines you then? Are you a soldier or are you a Foreign Office guy? Where's your head?
I'm probably more a soldier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Is that right? So
I've got more friends from the army
yeah,
because we did things in the army together.
yeah.
Whereas with the Foreign Office, I've got some friends in the Foreign Office, but nowhere near as many as I still have.
From my army days.
Which is a further time away, which is probably a bigger
Yeah.
thing, and that's just down to the camaraderie and the brotherhood,
Yeah.
surely, of their armed forces.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the key parts and components of the armed forces when you
Yeah.
think about it. So you end up now at the Foreign Office. Where's your first gig?
Brussels.
Was that the EU type thing?
Well, in Brussels, we get 3 missions there. And we got the British Embassy in Brussels. We've got the EU. It's called the UKREP. It's a UK representation to the. It's a UK representation to the EU, and we've also got what's it called? BritMix? No, not BritMix. We've got the NATO, and UKDEL, the UK delegation to NATO.
So all these 3 things are all going on in the same area.
Yeah.
3 totally different things. But are you involved in all of them then under your...
I'm involved with all of them because if we send a civil servant to Brussels, they get diplomatic status.
Okay.
So in Brussels, we had 150 UK diplomats. So we had
Seriously?
Oh yeah.
Of course, because you've got all these things that you... So 150 in Brussels?
Diplomats, and we had to provide properties for them.
Wow. So you've got the embassy.
Yeah.
Imagine the odd external office, because the embassy building can only be so big, so you might need some others. Then these 150 people need to live somewhere.
Well, the 150 was split between the UK delegation to NATO, the UKREP delegation, and the embassy. But for the purpose of managing them, when I say managing them, providing the properties, providing the security, we had a thing called the Joint Management Office, and also if they brought their kids to Brussels, say 12, 13-year-olds, they would go to the British school, which is like a boarding, fee-paying school.
Yeah.
So also when I was there, they actually paid for my kids to go to Epsom College in London.
So, see, this is almost like a mini city within a city. Now, all these people need protection, I take it. And just something else that's just crossed my mind. Brussels, you don't tend to hear a lot of terror attacks in Brussels. Right?
Well, there has been a few now, but I think the big thing about Brussels is we've got 150.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that because there's so many of us there and there's so many security services there, is that why we don't see? Because if you think about it, if you were the anti-West establishment terror organisation, okay, and you decided I want to cause terror and I want to blow up some important people, Brussels would be quite high up your list because of the amount of people there of importance. But then every person that's there has got a certain amount of protection. And we don't see as many because the level of security is preventing it and nipping it at the source. Because it must be like a magnet. And I've never thought about this until we're talking here. That Brussels would be quite a magnet for terror, but you don't hear that much about it. And is that because, is it quite a busy gig then?
It is. I don't know if you know, but 4 times a year, it's called, what do they call it now? But 4 times a year, the 28 heads of government what's it called again? The EU, the 28 countries, their heads of state and their entourage come to Brussels 4 times a year.
Yeah.
So the Prime Minister, and obviously the Foreign Secretary goes with them as well, they're there 4 times a year, along with the other 27 countries' heads of states as well. So it's a big gig, 4 times a year.
28 services.
And when they come, they need 28 hotels for their entourage. So all the hotels in Brussels are quite well organised, and they know when these functions are. And what happens is, say there's there's 28 decent hotels,
Mm-hmm.
and there's probably, of those 28 decent hotels, probably 16 of them can take anyone, and the other 12 can only take the small countries like Malta.
Yeah. And is that purely based on the potential risk?
Potential risk as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we would find that, let's just say you were at the Hilton in Brussels.
Mm-hmm.
For the first one, you probably get the UK delegation, and for the next one, you probably get the Swiss one, and for the no, they're not in it. Sorry, you pick the Swedish one,
Yeah.
and the one after you get the German one, then you get the French one. So, but it's quite funny. They're all using the same hotels,
Yeah.
just moving around.
Mm-hmm.
But
4 times a year.
4 times a year.
Incredible.
So we had 4 big gigs. So 4 times a year, the Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary and all the entourage. Because when these guys come, they come with a huge entourage.
Yeah.
For these meetings.
Because I remember talking to you before, and you were going through the list of prime ministers, and I'm thinking, how did that work? Well, I know how it works, because 4 times a year they were coming to the place where you spent a lot of your time.
When I was there, I just came across, in Brussels, Tony Blair.
Mm-hmm.
He was Prime Minister then, he just handed over to Gordon Brown.
Yeah.
So we had Tony Blair about 4 or 5 times there.
Yeah.
And then we had Gordon Brown for the next few years after that.
And what was your role? I mean, I know your role for a lot of it, pre-visit, was a lot of planning and make sure the operations are going to be safe and secure. But when they're in in Brussels, what's your contact and what's your role then? When, say, Tony Blair turns up.
Well, Tony Blair turns up. It was quite of a sort of he's there 4 times a year.
Yeah.
So they got the routine where they take him from Eurostar, because Eurostar was the sort of main route. So you probably get the guy who's, I remember when I was there, the guy, I forget his name now, but he was the head of the MOD.
Yeah.
He was the Defence Secretary.
Yeah.
And you go in a lift in Brussels and the Defence Secretary would walk out, because they were there we had 200 ministerial visits a year in Brussels. They're always coming to Brussels for something.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know, but the ministers do sort of Monday to Thursday, and then on a Thursday night they tend to go somewhere for the weekend, because they can, and they quite like it. So they'll jump in Eurostar. They'll get a taxi from Houses of Parliament to Eurostar, jump on the train and picked up at our end in an armoured car, and driven around
Thursday
with police.
to Sunday.
Thursday to Sunday, back to the airport and be back again in the train. We had 6 armoured cars, which were Jaguars, not Jaguars, they were BMWs, and we had a big car park. And sometimes you forget which are the normal ones and which are the armour ones, but the best way to do it is just to go up to the glass window and just tap it with your nail.
Yeah.
If you tap the bulletproof glass with your nail, you know it's bulletproof glass. So next time you're in a bank, just sort of a wee sneaky tap at the glass. And,
Would you know driving them that they're different?
Driving them is very different. We have to do. You're not allowed to. It's a bit like an HGV license. You've got to go and learn to drive an armoured car, mainly because the braking is different.
Mm-hmm.
The braking distances are quite considerable.
Imagine, yeah.
So when you brake, rather than sort of braking and stopping here, you go beyond, because it could be up to 6 tons, the vehicle.
Is that seriously?
Yeah.
So a car that could probably start maybe 3/4 of a ton to a ton, ends up
being
Six ton.
up to well, for the Toyota Land Cruisers, which tends to be the number one thing for Africa, and other countries throughout the world and the Middle East. They're about 6 ton.
Wow. Yeah. You put your foot in the brake. It doesn't matter if you've got upgraded brakes. That thing ain't stopping on this.
Well, it's got quite. I mean, one of the things you do is do training with the drivers. We take them into a not a big field, but an area, and we used to take a lot of water, these big water containers, the big plastic things, and we'd say, right, we're going to, when you drive, we want you to be 40 miles an hour, and when you get to these two, you put your foot in the brake. And then we say, now where do you reckon at 40 mile an hour do you think you'll stop? And they'd all they'd all have a guess, and they'd put their guess, and we knew which one was there. Then they would do it, and we're always way beyond it. They just didn't realise what the braking distances was on these arms.
What about accelerating? Is that pretty different as well, or the engine's strong enough to get them off the mark? Because in a situation, you need to be able to get away if they went kicked off.
Actually, when I was in Jamaica, I had my own armoured vehicle, which we actually picked up Cameron in the end, David Cameron.
Yeah.
So we picked him up at the airport. We used this one because we'd 3 armoured cars and 3 armoured vehicles in Brussels. In Jamaica, and they're Toyota Land Cruisers. And this is my I used to drive Bernald, the blue one. And we had to ship it back because we're not allowed to sell them in country. They have to be shipped back to UK and we destroy them because we don't want the bad guys getting one.
Well, that good.
They were that good, and they could sort of, use it for doing things. So we were never allowed to sell it locally. It had to be shipped back for decommissioning back in UK.
Which is destroyed.
Destroyed, yeah.
Wow. So your time in the Foreign Office, you've been to 38 countries.
I've been to 38 countries.
You would only go back to 8. Were the other 30 just dangerous, or was it just a bit shit?
Well, in my last posting, I was in Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mexico, I had to cover, whenever I went somewhere, I used to go there and I said, right, to my wife, if it's nice, right, when I go back next time, you can come with me. Okay. When I went to Mexico, she never came anywhere with me because I went to Belize.
Nice.
Right, and Belize is a very poor country. Okay, it's a very hot country, and Belize is very much like Africa. It's don't run it down, but it's a poor country.
Yeah.
Okay, and when I remember getting up, driven around by the police, went to Belize City, and they drove us around certain areas, and most of the houses there were wooden, and they told me that a young child was killed last week. There was a gunfight in the streets and the bullets went through the wooden thing and the girl was killed in a bed. You think, God, you just can't comprehend that. How can a child go to sleep in its bed and be shot in its bed by stray bullets from outside? So that was Belize City. I also went to Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala. I mean, just take Guatemala. People say, oh, the volcanoes is lovely. When I arrived in Guatemala airport, because of the situation in the country, you picked up from the airport with armed guys. We had an armed protection team who would pick you up from the airport into the armoured vehicle and you're off. So I get picked up with armoured vehicles in Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. I would never go back to those countries again. Belize.
So if you're what are you going to do in Honduras?
Okay, when I'm going to do Honduras, I'm doing security checks.
Yeah.
Okay, because we have annual inspections. For example, when I was in South Sudan, we got a wall. We've got barbed wire on it. Okay, but what you don't realise is that since you were there last year, someone's built a couple of things other side of that wall.
Which make it easier to go over.
They can just jump over.
Yeah.
So my job was to go there and see what's changed since last year, and what's the other side of that wall. Are these cameras still working? I see this country. These guys have done this. We should do more. For example, when I was in Brussels, you thought Brussels was okay, but in Brussels we had lots of break-ins, and we'd be in a block of say we'd have staff in a tower block of 6 properties. I used to go up to the top one. Say we had someone in the 5th floor, 3rd floor and 2nd floor, I'd go to the top one and come down and look at the 6th floor. And if I found we only had 2 locks on our door and everyone else had 4 locks on their door.
There's a reason.
There's a reason. So basically I was to make sure that we had the same, if not better, than our neighbours. In Brussels, we used to get everyone in Brussels, all the break-ins in Brussels happened during the day. And when I went there, I was quite shocked that we had so many house break-ins because they knew we were all diplomats.
You're out 9 to 5, of course. The kids are at school.
So we get lots of break-ins, and in apartment blocks, you just should kick down the door. So we then changed our doors to metal doors in apartments. So there's lots of crime in Brussels. Because we're easy pickings.
Incredible. Because when we spoke a month ago originally, and you're going, you're offering protection to very important people that we'll no doubt talk about. You kind of think, well, that can't happen every day. But this is the most probably another more important, equally important part of your job is the security of premises, buildings, and other people.
The number one priority is the staff. Okay, the number one priority for my role there was for the UK staff,
Okay.
24/7,
Yeah.
and for our locally employed staff during working hours. When the locally employed staff went home,
The police look after them now.
the police look after
Yeah.
them. But we were then still responsible for our UK staff, we call it,
24/7.
who went to the house. So we had to make sure, their house was secure, and in the event of something, no one could break in. Like when we were in Africa, we used to have safe. We call them keeps, where you in this house here, we can imagine where we are now.
Yeah.
At the bottom of those stairs, out of metal gates and locks.
Okay.
So someone could break into this house, but they couldn't come up the stairs.
Yeah.
So a lot of our properties mainly in Africa and even in the Caribbean, we had the exact same thing. So they couldn't break in, and even when we were in other countries, we'd have bars in the windows as well.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah.
So your job's a fascinating job, even just doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And would you just make sure it was there, or would you provide close protection for dignitaries that are there under your care then, or was that a separate thing? Not talking about people coming to visit,
Yeah.
just let's say the diplomat for Belgium or diplomat for the EU, they're in your care. How would that work?
They wouldn't really be in our care.
Okay.
It would be for the police to do that. But we often had visitors from UK that we often get somebody, the House of Lords, who was coming out to speak to Ugandan something, when I was in Uganda. And we would look after them. We even did, in fact, when I was there, we had the Lord Mayor of London come out to Uganda, and everyone got excited, think it was Boris. But it's not Boris. It's the Lord Mayor of London. In fact, Boris was the
mayor in the
was the mayor of London at the time, but the Lord Mayor is different.
Yeah.
So we had people at the Lord Mayor coming out to do exchanges and talk to banks and stuff.
Yeah.
So we'd also have to look after them. Yeah.
And provide that close protection. Now on to the tasty, the big ones. I know some of them, but who are the sort of most well-known people that you've had to look after, and what's it been like? And safely tell us what you can tell us. And
okay, well, I've met 7 prime ministers.
Wow.
Okay, I've not met Richie Sunak, and I've not met Theresa May.
Everyone before.
Everyone from John Major upwards.
Wow.
Fun enough, John Major was one of the ones. He's the senior, well, not senior, the longest, the senior former prime minister, because when they line up in the 11th of the 11th, he's the senior one.
Is that based on the oldest alive one, or the time that served? How did
the oldest alive one?
Is that John Major? Seriously? Is that it?
If you watch the march out,
That makes me feel old.
It is John Major, and then you've got Tony Blair, and then you've got Gordon Brown, then you've got.
So the oldest, or it goes in age, it just goes in when they served.
Yeah.
Is that it, John Major?
Yeah,
Everybody else before him's dead?
Yeah. Margaret Thatcher's one before him.
Of course.
They're all still alive from John Major.
That blows my mind, and it just shows you how old I'm getting, because you think, well, that's not possible. But yeah, Margaret Thatcher's dead, and then you go, well, who's before her?
So from John Major to now, there's 7 former prime ministers. We call them FPMs in a foreign office.
And the only one that you've not met?
There's 2 I've not met. Only former prime minister is Theresa May,
Wow.
but and Richie Sunak. But I've met them all and hosted them all at some stage, including Theresa May and including
Boris.
Boris twice. Boris has made me a cup of tea.
Stop it. How do you end up Boris Johnson making a cup of tea? That's just bizarre. How does that work out?
Well, he was only foreign secretary then. But anyway,
okay.
Yeah. So, but otherwise,
Was his tea all right?
The tea was good, yeah. Now, what happened was he came out.
That's a claim to fame you ain't going to beat, is it? Boris Johnson made me tea.
Well, he was a really down-to-earth guy.
Seriously.
Because what often happened is when you were waiting for flights, you have your VIP, you get the lounges for the gold, BA gold and whatever, but there's always other lounges for the VIPs, the diplomatic people. But in those lounges, it's not 24/7. You've literally got to do it yourself.
Okay.
So Boris came out for Irma, because Hurricane Irma happened. Was it 2016, 2017? It was in the Caribbean.
And you're there, you're working there
Yeah.
at the time.
And basically, we were doing that, and we were in. He was waiting to fly back. We've been around looking at things and flying here and flying there, and we're back in the VIP lounge waiting for the BA overnight flight to UK, and it was all over. You know, his security team were there, and it's in the VIP lounge. It's a do-it-yourself, you know. And Boris says, "Right, who wants a tea? Who wants a?"
I can imagine that. It's a bit surreal, though, eh?
Yes, he's just like that, you know. But the rest, no.
No?
The guys I've met, I like Boris. You can see why people like him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a personality. And I think at that time, and we're not going to get into a political debate, but when he was PM and you had Trump, like them or loathe either of them in America, the one thing that had used to make me smile was they are the most unpolitical politicians leading two of the most powerful nations. And I thought, I don't care if they're good or bad, they're different and they're entertaining.
And you get things done.
Well, aye.
Great on Boris. Boris was Foreign
Secretary.
Yeah.
And you realise what a waste of money the DFID was.
Yeah.
Department for International Development, who were separate from the. You get an ambassador, you get DFID, and the DFID didn't give the ambassador any money. And Boris saw that. And one of the first things he came in when he did, he was boof, right? DFID can go to the Foreign Office and the Foreign Office can use their funding.
Right.
Which is 6% of GDP.
So he solved a problem by the stroke of a wind pen.
Yeah.
And quite a practical problem.
Quite a practical problem because the ambassador, who was the senior person in the country, didn't have the dosh. It was all DFID.
Incredible.
Yeah, but now it's changed.
So one comes under the other.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to, but who was the worst out of them then? Are there any that you just thought you'd done an absolute, or done something that you thought that's unpleasant?
Not really. I don't think any of them. I found some of the foreign secretaries we had in the time were a bit. They were, they were eating boys, and a bit too whatever. And I quite laughed when Cameron came back to be Lord Foreign Secretary, because it's a government saving for them. Because as Foreign Secretary, you get a 24/7 armed security team.
Yeah, okay.
He had that anyway, as former Prime Minister.
He's going to get out for life, isn't he?
So it was almost like, how can we save money? I know, we'll make a former Prime Minister. Yeah. So I kind of laughed when I heard that he was going to be Foreign Secretary.
It was a budgetary positive.
It was a budget positive, yeah, because the team that would normally look after the Foreign Secretary is covered now.
Aye. And just a figure. What's that figure? We've got 7 former Prime Ministers, all getting security, all getting... What do you reckon the cost in there is thrown at that board, roughly?
I wouldn't like to guess.
Is it 7 figures?
Oh, yeah. Interesting enough, when, for example, let me just take an example of John Major. He came to Jamaica. He used to go to Jamaica every year for his holiday. Mm-hmm. So I met John Major in about 2016, I think it was. So he'd been Prime. When did he was
years before that.
Years before that. So he still gets a team of 9 people.
9,
right? Now what those 9 are doing, there's 3 who are with them this week. There's 3 who are going to be with them next week, and there's 3 who were with them last week. And they keep swapping over and doing advance parties. So when John Major came just for a holiday, we had 3 guys come out. Just 2 come out to do the recce, and they'd go say, right, when he comes off the plane, where does he go? Where can we park our vehicle? Where can we get him in? He's going to this hotel. Let's go to that hotel. What room is he going to be in? He's staying here overnight, and he's going to the north of the island. And where's the hospitals? Where do we drive? And who's the local police? Who's the local police command? So we do all this stuff the week before John Major would arrive. And I don't know if you know, but John Major, when he's the only Prime Minister not been to university. I don't know if you knew that. He's the only Prime Minister that we've ever had, I think, he's not been to university.
Oh.
Anyway, John Major, when he left school, he went to try and teach people English. And he went to Dar es Salaam and he damaged his knee. And he's always had a problem with his leg. But now his leg, John Major's 70 something, whatever he is. he cannot do stairs, and certainly in 215 he couldn't do stairs. So we had to walk the route from the aircraft to whatever to make sure he didn't do stairs, or we get him down an upper lift. So it was just things like that we had to do before the guy arrives. And then when he arrives, we pick him up from the airport, someone sorts out the baggage, someone sorts out the passports, and off he goes. And now the guys that come with them, the guys who've come in the advance party, they give them the weapons. As soon as they come off the plane, there's the weapons, there's the microphones, and they're off.
So everything's there in place.
Everything's there in place.
And they're allowed to carry weapons because it's a diplomatic.
Well, what we
have to do is I have to, well before they come, we got all the details of the weapons, the serial numbers, and the number of rounds. And this has to be registered with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Mm-hmm.
So well before they come, I've got the number of the people that are coming, who they are, who's carrying the guns, what they have, and get it approved by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which happens. It's a protocol thing. And so it's all done, and we even got to work out the radio frequencies for the radios.
Now, that's you then letting the British government body know what we've got in the country. Do we let the foreign country know? Do they need to know?
Oh yeah, sorry. If for example, when John Major came, we had to liaise with the Jamaican government.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew that there was a prime minister. And it just
no, but do they know that there's guns coming in, there's ammunition?
Yeah, it's the way the world happens. So it's not just us, the Brits bringing guns in, the Chinese are bringing them in, the Americans are bringing them. In fact, the Americans have got them all the time, virtually. Whoever's coming in wants to bring weapons. If they go through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and apply for it, they get it. It's never refused, particularly for a head of state or a royal.
Mm-hmm. So you met all these prime ministers and former prime ministers. Then we go into the royal family. I've spoken before we came on about Charles and the Queen, Princess Anne. So where were you looking after these people, and what were they like?
For the Queen, right? The Queen. Basically, I met the Queen at Sandhurst first of all.
Okay. Well, you're training.
When I was training, and because I was one of the ones who was getting an award, I got an award for sport. We were in a small group. We met to meet the Queen. I mean, she when I passed out at Sandhurst, she was at Sandhurst. She was she gave out the commissions basically. She was the.
Well, you're early 20s and there's a Queen.
Wow. The Queen. And she was chatting to us very close up, and she said, "What kind of socks do you wear?"
No.
And we said, "What? What's the Queen asking us about socks for?" But then we realised she's a mother, right? She's a mother first. It just so happened when we were at Sandhurst, Prince Andrew, was going through his Royal Marine training, which he didn't pass. I don't know if you remember that. He failed.
All right.
Now what happened was the Royal Marine training, you got to do a run in so many minutes with things in your back, and you got to get across the assault course in a certain time. And it just so happened he was doing all this yomping. He got bad blisters in his feet. And the Queen was saying, "Oh, Andrew's at Royal Marine College and he's got terrible blisters. You know, what kind of socks do you guys wear?" And we say, "Well, when we do the yomping, we always wear 2 pairs of socks." You know, so we said this to her, and she says, "I must tell him to wear 2 pairs of socks." But you must remember the Queen is a mother. Correct. You know, she's a mother first.
Yeah.
So she was quite keen to meet us because her son was going through the
similar age,
similar age, same experience, you know, getting, you know, the army.
Incredible. So isn't it just bizarre to think the Queen's like, "What socks do you wear?" Really? What? I'm glad she didn't need to know about your pants. That would have been even more embarrassing. But
she was a mother.
Of course, bizarre. And grandmother.
Yeah.
And her son's going through something that you've experienced. Why wouldn't she? Yeah. You're on nervous thinking, I wonder what the Queen will ask me. What socks do you wear? That's bizarre. And did you meet her again, but as you went on your other duties?
The next time it was 19, I forget what year it was. I was back in Brussels about 2007. Mm-hmm. She came out, this is one of her last overseas trips. Oh. She came for the 100 years of Passchendaele. There's a thing called Passchendaele. And she came for that. And I say she came for that. She came and she was staying in Brussels for one night, then she was moving off to Passchendaele. Yeah. So we had to host her. And we knew this, 3 months in advance. So we knew the Queen was coming. And one of my jobs was to go and take photographs we were tasked to go. The Queen's not sure. She's been invited to stay at the Palace of the King,
which is in Brussels.
You have to take photographs to make sure it's all right. She's quite likes it.
She wanted to see where they would be. Now, this is what we were told, okay? And we took all the photographs of the stately rooms and where they would be and whatever. But whenever the Queen and the Prime Minister, everyone move around, they get an entourage of people. They got the, we'll come on to Charles in a minute, but he had about, say 10 people, okay? And they all had to be accommodated near Charles. So the Queen had, I can't remember now, but I think she had more at the time.
Yeah.
So we had to go and look at take photographs of the rooms and where the other rooms would be and where her lady in waiting would be and where her back woman would be and the press secretary. And so we had to take photographs of all these things. And because Brussels was quite okay with hotels, because we get the 4 heads of state visits a year, all the hotels are all geared up for large things. So we had to go and take photographs of the palace and all the rooms, and then go to one of the hotels and take photographs of the rooms and everything else, and a map of the layout and everything else, and send it back. And the decision come back: we'll stay in the hotel. which was. Well, obviously the palace wasn't good enough, but I'm not sure if that was her decision or that was her press secretary, because in the hotel, what normally happened was at the end of the corridor would be this sort of stately room. It would be the diplomatic suite or heads of state suite. And all along that corridor, they could have other people, and then they could have security at the end and job done.
Possibly just because a more modern setting, it might have been easier to manage.
It is.
And as you say, you're working in a place that's used to dignitaries, used to all diplomats, all that sort of stuff. So if the hotels are set up where a normal hotel might have one room suitable for such a person, they might have one at the end of every corridor.
Yeah.
So it would, they're designed with that in mind. And aye. So did you meet her on this trip when she?
I basically saw her. Right. No, I didn't get close enough to her, but she came. She came with the Duke of Edinburgh as well. Mm-hmm. So she was only there for one night. She did. The fly-in, she got the Eurostar again, taken off Eurostar. She went to the palace, had a meal there, and then back to the hotel. And the next day they were off to Passchendaele.
Flying visit.
And I technically wasn't involved with that, but I was very involved with the Charles visit. Mm-hmm. Charles came the year later.
Okay. And again, just as this was in Brussels, still in the Brussels gig.
Now, Prince Charles was coming at the time, and he was going to give a speech to the European Union. A speech about environmental and basically buildings, historical buildings, and keeping the prestige there. So he was to come to Brussels. So we knew this like 3 months in advance. Oh, Charles was coming. In fact, he came on the 14th of February. It was a Valentine's Day. Not that sort of ruined my night, but that was, I think it was 2018 or 2017. Anyway, he came and he stayed for 2 nights. Because normally when VIPs come, they stay for one night. So they fly in, they come in the morning, full days organisation, including a dinner at the night with meeting people. They'd have a number of visits the next day and then they'd be off again. So most VIP or Prime Minister or senior VIP visits was one night, but he did 2. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to, and he actually stayed at our diplomatic residence. Because it just so happened we've got, it's the head of the EU's building. It's about like 10 Downing Street, actually. It's the same, doesn't look big, but when you're in it, it's huge. So he stayed there for 2 nights. And it was interesting, his team came the week before, and they met all our staff. And we'd staff meetings of how do we address them, what do we do, and can we serve them food, and what about this and what about that. So we were given a briefing that the only person that can give the prince a drink or give him food would be his butler or one of his security team. So he won't, if someone comes around with drinks, he won't take it. He'll give someone a nod and they will go and get him one and bring him one. Also, an interesting thing that I was really quite shocked, because he was in every embassy in the world, we normally have a VIP room, which is normally called the Queen's room, for the Queen. Probably, I'm not sure if I've left the Foreign Service, so probably we renamed the King's room now. So he was in the Queen's suite, with other rooms in this residence. And we obviously the lady who was in charge of the residence, she was very pleased, and she got the best bedding and everything out, and we got new bedding, and it was really great, the finest cotton we could possibly get. And of course his butler came in, and I was there with the butler, and the butler says, right, you just ripped all the stuff off and threw it on the floor. What are you doing? He says, we can't use this. I said, what's wrong? He says, we bring our own bedding. Yeah. And I says, why? He says, we bring our own bedding and we take our own bedding away, so there's no DNA left behind.
Yeah, and I'd imagine, it's a security thing as well, because who was that guy, the Russian that got poisoned? What's his name? In London.
Yes.
Oh, God, you know the one I'm on about.
Yeah,
so
bald head in the end.
Aye. So, that's a security thing that I would imagine it would be easier just to throw the bedding out than to get on site the minute before he goes to bed and make sure that whole thing there's safe.
Mm-hmm. I think it was also leaving hairs behind.
What's the DNA? What's just the fear? If God forbid you might happen to have, as he is now, King Charles, if you had some of his DNA, what is the worst you can do?
Well, we had a couple of people that turned up and they said that they were Prince Charles's love child and stuff like that. So there was a few of those. We actually had one guy turned up and he said, wants to speak to the Queen. He's in a bit of a nutcase.
Where are you at the time?
I'm in Brussels, sorry.
Right.
We get lost in that.
We call them walk-ins, where someone walks in and they say, I want to speak to the Queen. What about? Get on the phone. And we can't get them out. We can't throw them out. So we used to, in the end, just have a seat and we'll see if she's available. And after about 2 hours, they get bored and walk out.
I just don't even talk to them. Just leave them. Right, okay.
Rather than drag them out in the street and have them shouting and screaming, and just bore them to death.
Yeah.
But we had a couple of guys. Remember one guy in crutches, and I think because he turned up in crutches, we felt sorry for him. Normally we don't let them in, because this guy was in crutches. We opened the door for him. He says, I want to speak, and he says, how can I help you? So I want to speak to the Queen.
No way.
Why? I'm Prince Charles's love child.
No.
I want to claim my inheritance.
My granny.
So he was one of the guys. What we do, just bore him to death. In the end, he.
That's incredible. Okay, let's say I can understand they put new bedding down because potential security risks of somebody else touching such a thing prior to his visit. Then he goes. I don't. What's the problem? If God forbid somebody got, I take it to do the same. If he drinks out a glass, it's got to be destroyed because you get DNA off that.
Well, it wasn't quite as bad as that. I'm not sure why, but even when they left, they sterilised the room. It was bleached. You walk in and you go, it was.
What's
bleached.
the practical reason for that?
I just don't want to leave any hairs behind, anything that could be maybe left at a crime scene somewhere in a year's time. Who knows? But that was quite a shock to us that all this was taken. And then when he left, everything was sterilised.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And did you find out about Andrew in the socks?
I actually met him.
Tell me it wasn't in an island. It was a guy that's just committed suicide or been murdered on.
It was not Andrew. It was Edward. Prince Edward.
Okay. That's a safer one.
Did I say Andrew?
Unfortunately,
Edward, yeah. I met Edward some years later.
Right.
I was in the village at the Commonwealth Games.
Okay.
When I was in Uganda, I told you about played squash. Yeah.
Aye.
I played squash. So I was in Team Uganda. I was a Ugandan. I'll show you a picture later. There's a picture of all the Ugandans at the Commonwealth Games, and there's me. It's difficult to spot me.
You were competing?
Yeah. Well, basically, I was the team coach for the Ugandan squash team.
No way.
Yeah.
At the Commonwealth Games? Where were the games this year?
Glasgow.
Those ones?
Yeah. So I was a Ugandan. So it was really good because I marched on, the opening ceremony.
Parkhead?
Yeah, Parkhead, yeah. I'll show you some pictures later, yeah.
Have you got them in digital format? I'll get them and we can pop them up onto the screen as we're talking.
One of me actually standing there and you see Celtic football ground.
I'll maybe edit that bit out. You are the Ugandan Olympic coach?
No, Commonwealth
Commonwealth,
Games.
sorry,
Commonwealth
pardon,
Games.
I'm over.
So I was the Ugandan Commonwealth squash coach.
That's bizarre life.
Yeah.
But it was quite interesting because when we were doing all this thing, I used to, because I played squash and I was as good as these guys, but I didn't want to deny anyone a place to go to the Commonwealth Games.
Fair play.
But I was the coach. And one of the reasons I put myself forward was that, hey, I'm from Glasgow, you know. And what I did was when we went there like 2 weeks before the games opened. Okay, the games opened, I can't remember the dates now, but you're allowed to go there 2 weeks before. And funny enough, when we flew, well, I actually flew there early and I met them because basically I didn't want to deny a Ugandan the opportunity to go to the Commonwealth Games. So they had a budget and it was all about the flights and everything else. Once they get the Ugandans or the team to Glasgow, from then on, everything's free, right? But it's getting them the uniform, you know, getting the kit and flying them there, and everything then is free. So I didn't want to deny Ugandan the opportunity to fly there. So I flew independently a couple of days before, and I met them at Glasgow Airport when they all come off. And I knew where the transport vehicles were, and I said, right, we're off here. And interesting, when we arrived, our team arrived. They went there 2 weeks early because they can, and you know it's free. Let's go as soon as we can. And when we arrived, it was the New Zealand team and the Australian team, because hey, they come from the other side of the world. You know, so they wanted to be there 2 weeks early to acclimatise and everything else. So yeah, I lived in a Commonwealth Games village.
That's incredible. There's so many aspects of your life that are just a bit off the wall. You know, you're like, I don't think I've ever met a Ugandan Commonwealth coach in my life before. So, and is this where you met Edward?
I met Edward
Later on. But before that, this is before I even went to Jamaica. I was still in Uganda. And there's twice in my life that I've frozen when I saw someone. And the first time was when I met Margaret Thatcher. Because I was in the Home Office then, and we wasn't expecting to see Margaret Thatcher. And we were in this meeting, and these security guys came and sort of pushed us out of the way. And I thought, who's this? You know. And then it was Prime Minister, come this way, Prime Minister, Prime Minister. And I thought, what are they on about? And of course, Margaret Thatcher came in. They still referred to them as Prime Minister, because when John Major's still Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, and she walked, and I thought, my goodness, it's Margaret Thatcher. And I just froze, you know, and the hairs in the back of my head just stood up. You know, I thought, God, Margaret Thatcher, because when I was growing up, she was the queen almost. Yeah, he was Iron Lady. And she walked past and she, you know, went to this meeting. I thought, good, so that was freeze number one. Freeze number two, Commonwealth Games Village, in where they eat the meals, and it's a huge place where the food, what's it called? Not the cookhouse, that's the army expression, but in the village, a big eating area, huge area, and there's an airlock there, and I went through the airlock, and they're 5'1" Fraser Toms, what's it called? Oh gosh, do you want to pause a second? Shelley Ann Fraser Price. Do you know who Shelley Ann Fraser Price is?
Forgive me on that one.
Shelley Ann Fraser Price at that time was the fastest woman in the world, right? Yes. She'd won double golds, right? Yes. 100 meters, 200 meters, and she was Jamaican. Yeah. And she's 5'1", right? Yeah. And I met like this, and I just froze, and the back of my hairs went again, and I thought, this is the fastest woman in the world, and here I am standing opposite her. I've seen her lots of times since, but that was when I first met her. I was a Ugandan then, obviously, and she was a Jamaican, and I just couldn't believe it, and I just stood there, and she looked at me because I was frozen. Then I went, all right. I opened the door for her.
I think that's pretty incredible that out of all the people you met, I can imagine the Margaret Thatcher one, because she has quite a personality, and you know, people of our age, the impact that she had in her and a lot of people negatively and a lot of people positively. But when you consider all the other people you've met, and it takes this woman that's a 5'1" athlete for you to get into that position again, it's quite a thing. So what was why were you in such awe of her? Was this just somebody you respected so much?
I respected because I remember seeing the Olympics for the past couple of years. And in fact, I forget the time zone now. This was 2014, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was Birmingham, and it was Beijing, and she'd won the golds there, and Usain had won the golds as well. Usain didn't actually compete in the Commonwealth Games that year, although he just went there to visit. But she did compete in the relays, and she was living in the village,
Just like normal.
just like a normal person. People didn't really know her like Usain, but I knew her because I like sport, and the fact she's only 5'1", she's so small, So I was just dumbstruck by her. And I met lots of other people in the village. There was the guy called Le Torpedo.
The swimmer.
The swimmer. He was there, and I sat down because it's a big where you do the food. And I saw this Scottish guy, right? The Scottish guy with the Scottish tracksuit. And although I was Ugandan, I went and sat with the Scottish guy. And I said, "Oh, what event do you do?" And he goes, "Oh, I do swimming." And next minute, Torpedo comes and sits. The guy from Australia. And he came in chatting away, and because he knew this Scottish guy was a swimmer.
So, right, I've got a picture in mind now, right, and I can't get it out. It's you being the same skin colour as me, walking about the Commonwealth Games village and stadia when you go to the thing, mate, with Uganda tracksuit on.
Yeah.
That must have done some looks.
It did, yeah. I've actually got a picture. We've got all the Ugandan team.
And you're that?
It's quite easy to spot me.
Hi. Oh, brilliant. That's incredible. So, now, out of all the people that you've provided security for, who was the nicest?
I think Boris. I like Boris.
Yeah.
But I'm quite prepared to state on here that on the Charles v. Diana, right, I was a Diana man.
Had you met Diana?
I'd not met Diana,
yeah.
but when
No, I get that, yeah.
But I've driven past. I used to cycle past where she stayed, and years after she was dead. I forget, it was St James's, not St James's, Kensington Palace. I used to cycle on the way to work in London, through Hyde Park.
Yeah.
And years after she died, you go past there, and the gates there full of flowers. Right, years and years after. So I remember that before I went to Brussels. And when we were told that Charles was coming, we were at a meeting in the heads of section.
You got mixed emotions there, were you?
Well, no, but I was a Diana fan rather than a Charles fan. But when he left, I was a Charles fan.
Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't say I wasn't a fan, but if it was,
you gained a lot of respect during his visit.
Yeah.
So what happened then? What was the clincher for you?
Well, he'd actually been to Brussels before, and some of my team said, "Oh gosh, when he was here last time, he was really short and very abrupt, and he used to shout about not being on time, and we're meant to be here at 1 o'clock, and the driver's taking his, there was lots of little pre-Charles visit stories." And when we had the meeting, we were told he was coming. The heads of section, because you normally get heads of section meeting, we all discuss he's coming, right? We can now tell our teams the dates are, and then we said, "Is she coming?" Because often when you get visits like that, you normally get a visit for the prince, and then a visit, because whenever Duke of Edinburgh used to go with the Queen, he'd be off on one visit and she'd be off on the other. So it'd be two details, you're spread both ways.
Yeah.
So one of the first questions was, "Is she coming?" Queen Camilla now. And the answer was, "No, she's not coming." And there was a big sigh of relief in the room, and that she wasn't coming, because at that time she wasn't really favourable. The jury was still out.
Yeah.
But anyway, Prince Charles came, and we were briefed about how we couldn't feed him. His butler would go into the kitchens where things were being prepared, and they prepare like 10 plates, and the butler would take this one and then go and serve Prince. I call him Prince Charles because he was always Prince Charles. Yeah. So he would serve the prince, and likewise drinks. I remember he used to take his honey. He didn't have milk. He had honey in his tea and stuff like that. But that was his butler did that, or one of the security guys. Because if we were going somewhere, we went to visit the Royal Palace. he would go and the butler didn't come, but the security guy would go and get the teas and stuff, and no one can serve the prince. It had to be one of his security detail, or his press secretary, or the butler.
That was it. So why did he go from maybe a 3 out of 10 north in your estimations?
He spent a lot of time with people.
Yeah.
You know, he was very personable.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, he was, mentioned that my favourite was Boris, because Boris was very personable as well. But he was very personable as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that he said things that I noticed Princess Anne said, and it's almost like a line of, have we met before?
Great.
And she said that a few times to virtually everyone she met.
No, that's great.
And it's almost like, and I thought, why did they say that? It makes you feel like they recognise you from before.
Oh, there is that, yeah. But I've seen it in a lot of situations, particularly with ex-footballers, and it might be the same thing. When they meet people, and they have met them before, can you remember me from, I met you after the Scottish Cup final, and you came out and you went onto the bus and I gave you a hat, and you think, not a chance is he going to remember that, right? So it maybe cuts away that awkwardness as well, that we met before.
You look familiar, but rather than, because it's like, have we met before? Oh yes, we have, Prince.
So proud.
Remember last year, and so proud that he remembered you. But he said that to a lot of people, and they hadn't met him before. But that's his sort of.
Yeah, no. If he asks it 10 times, he's making somebody feel great.
He is, yeah. So he said that when I first saw him, he goes, "Have we met before?" You know, and I thought, I know you're. I went to call him your Royal Highness the first time, and thereafter it was Sir. So we all got the briefing of how to address him. How do we address him? So it was, no, sir, we haven't. Oh, you look familiar. He didn't recognise me at all. But it's one of the opening lines, and I noticed he said that to quite a few people. And then when Anne came, she said the same thing to quite a few people. And it's almost like it's an opening for them to tell the story. Oh yes, I came to the palace and they got the MB. Oh yes, I remember now.
Yes, well done. Of course, I don't know, and it's a nice touch. And I think, conscious of the time, and you've got other stuff on today. I've asked you who you liked.
Okay.
You know what I'm going to ask you next.
Who do we not like?
Aye, who's? You thought, bugger off, don't come back.
Well, I didn't. I think a lot of them were, felt they were quite important. So there's no one I didn't like. They were all okay, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think they've been polite.
They're being polite. They didn't really spend a lot of time. I mean, I was just with in the background with them. But one of my funniest ones was with what's his name, John Major. Yeah. When John Major was waiting, we were in the VIP room where you got to make your own teas and coffees. But his security team made teas and coffees for him, and she was there. Norma was there as well. And it just so happened when he was there, it was the time of the US elections. Okay. And it was when it was either going to be Trump or
was the Biden one? Oh, Thingy's wife.
Yeah, his wife.
Terrible to his terrible link there. That was his first election campaign.
That was the first election campaign, and of course we were there, and she came on TV, saying something, and he went off in one. He went, "She's a terrible woman. Watch out!"
No way.
We're just, and we were just absolutely shocked that he went off and a really
like that in front of people.
Yeah, in front of people, and we were going. And he says, she should never get in power. She's a terrible woman. And he really went off in one, and we were all quite shocked, And
he's in his 70s at the time, well, late 60s at the time.
Yeah, late 60s, yeah.
That's incredible.
Hillary Clinton, yeah.
I don't disagree with him.
Yeah,
but you would have
he's
thought.
Obviously met her when he was PM back in, and he was president, and she was the first lady.
But you got to think and consider the surroundings, the other people there. And for him but this is a man that's been in the most important job in the country.
Yeah.
And he would have been well used to how to behave.
Yeah.
And for him to go like that, when he knows his surroundings, and he knows that the people, with all due respect, are strangers to him.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was.
I mean, I can't stand her. If she came on the telly like I used to do with Sturgeon, or get her off my telly, I can't go her. But I'm in my own house. If I was the ex-Prime Minister in an area with what, 20, 30 people.
Well, there wasn't quite 20, 30. It was the ambassador, right? Because what happens is we always do a thing called two wheels up. So the ambassador was there. I was there looking with the security, and his security team were there. And I think that was a bit it. So it was a bit his security team, the ambassador, and me. And he went off and won. Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. So, you're not prepared to tell us who you didn't like, but I respect that.
I'm not saying I didn't like. There's no one I really didn't like. Probably people were rude. Yeah. A bit dismissive. I won't mention names, but there's a couple of foreign secretaries I thought were quite rude.
See, this is interesting. You did touch on that before. And you get, there's a hierarchy there. And it's a sort of underling that's the one that's a pain in the arse.
Yeah.
The one here is like probably looking going, you ain't impressing anybody here because they've lived it. Yeah. They might have been that person before and might have been the arse. But it's amazing how experience makes you... another thing is the Charles situation. The people who were there previously with the Charles situation were maybe not looking forward to it as much. But when he came back a more experienced prince at the time...
And he changed. Yeah. He was... we had to rush him around, he kept talking to people. I think I very quickly told you that he was coming to the embassy to meet all the different teams of individuals, like the defence team, the agriculture team, all the different teams. Yeah. And we had all pre-arranged. We went into this room and there was 8 groups of people, all with cups of teas and saucers. And when the prince came, he was being ushered round, and the lead person of that team would introduce the prince to the team and tell them what to do. He's meant to be there, say, at 2:00. So they were all there. He had to be there with a little saucers and cups of tea. Incredible. And the prince was going to come in and be given a cup of tea, and he's going to walk round and talk to them all. He was going to be in there for half an hour or something, right? He's meant to be there at 2:00. He was delayed with his previous thing because he kept talking to everyone. We couldn't get him out. He's being nice to everyone. I mean, come on, sir, come on, Your Highness, we're going to get a move on. And so basically, we had to make an announcement, right? Everyone, don't drink your tea.
He's not here yet. You're not getting another cup.
It's not. We can't. He's on his way. He's not here yet. He's not in the building yet. This is about 2:10, and he's meant to be there at 2. Don't drink your tea, have your cup half full. It might be cold, but don't worry about it. But you can't turn up with his cup of tea and you've all finished yours.
It's not a good look.
So we had to tell everyone to hold the cup and just let it go cold and just sip it when it was cold. But we mustn't embarrass the prince. So that was a funny one.
Incredible.
As well.
Listen, it's been great talking to you, Clark. You've had an intriguing career. An intriguing life up until now, and I imagine there's more chapters left. But if you were to write the book of Clark Adam, Captain Clark Adam, I may add, what's the highlight so far?
Highlight? Well, I've done lots of sporty things, right? But obviously, I've represented Scotland, I've played for Great Britain.
Uganda.
Well, the favourite was the Commonwealth Games. Yeah. I mean, walking out there at Parkhead with a Ugandan team was really quite spectacular.
Yeah.
You can see why footballers like it. I mean, you just walk out there. Remember the film Gladiator?
Yeah.
Remember Gladiator when they go into the auditorium for the first time? Yeah. They're there with their weapons, they're all ready to fight, and they walk up there, then the noise hits them. Yeah. And they're quite stunned. Yeah. They're stunned by the crowd noise. Well, I experienced that in Parkhead, coming through the not the tunnel, but the bit round the side. And you walk in there, and I said, and it's Uganda, and you walk in, the noise, it's something you can't really describe. And I can see why footballers, when they're not playing in the team or not in the team anymore, how they miss it. It was quite an experience to have that, 55,000, whatever it was, people shouting at you. Not shouting, but cheering. So that was probably my favourite sporting experience.
Wow.
Being with Uganda and everything that went with it. And I think meeting the prime ministers, it was interesting. I've met all these people. I forgot to mention Princess Anne. She was one of my favourites. Sorry,
all right,
we didn't cover Princess Anne.
I forgot Princess Anne. How dare you?
It was quite funny. Very quickly, Cameron was prime minister, and he says, I want to come to Jamaica. I want to come on this date. And we had to go back and say, well, we'd love to host you, Prime Minister, but we've got hosting Princess Anne on that date. Okay, I'll come the day after then.
He parked. Did you ever meet Edward and ask him about the socks?
I did, yeah. Sorry, I was coming on to that.
I was at the Commonwealth Games.
Yes, I met him. And funnily enough, I was in Uganda at the time. Or, of course, I was a Ugandan team. And it just so happened he'd been to Uganda like 3 years previously, in his role of, prince. And he planted a tree.
Yeah.
And when I went there, I introduced myself because he was in a VIP area and I was in the VIP area as well. I said to his school team, "Is it okay if I go and speak to him? I'm a diplomat from the British Foreign Office based in Uganda." "Oh yeah, go and speak to him. No problem, son." So I went and spoke to him. I said, "Oh, I can introduce myself, Your Royal Highness. I'm based at the British High Commission in Uganda. And I believe you were there 2 years ago." He goes, "Oh yes, I was, yeah." I says, "You planted a tree just outside my office. And do you want to know how high it is now?" So I told him how high. So we started off with the tree story.
Yeah.
And he said, "How's Uganda?" We talked about Uganda. And I said, "Oh, by the way, I met your mother when I was at Sandhurst." I referred to her as his mother. And then I said, and she asked us about socks, and I told him the story about the socks. And it's first when I said it, I could see his,
Careful.
He's about to say, if he was a dragon, he'd have blown me on fire. But then he calmed down. He said, "Oh, yes, I had problems with my blisters. I remember it well." He didn't say that. He just talked about his blisters. But yeah.
And did you think she passed the info on?
Sorry?
Do you think she passed the tips on?
She probably did, but it was probably too late by then.
Well, I think that's a great note to finish with, Clark. It's been a fascinating insight into your life. And as I say to my guests, the gift of time, of your time, is sometimes the most important gift you can give someone. So thank you very much for that, and for opening up into some of your memories. It's been a fantastic journey. Have we forgot anything?
Well, just what do I do now? You've asked me what I do now.
Yeah, go on.
I'm now a property investor.
Yeah.
And I've got 7 properties here in Montrose.
Brilliant.
And also I've done mastermind courses, and I've been on stage most recently. Strategy Implementation Live. I think I maybe showed you a picture of it. I was their top performer on property investment program. So that's my new life. I've retired, but
you need to keep active.
I've got to keep active, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, fascinating. And I think this is one of the main reasons I started doing this, which is just a glorified hobby, as it is. And that is getting interesting people. And it's, you think you know the person's story.
Yeah.
But there's all, like that Uganda thing, that's the takeaway for me. That's just bonkers, right? I just love that. Yeah. How a guy that's just went from Cardonald to the Ugandan Commonwealth National Squash team. Right? It's just bonkers. And I think we've all got a story, but you've just got so many. And I can't thank you enough for, it's been an entertaining journey through your life up to now. And again, just thank you very much. And did you enjoy that experience?
I did, yes.
Oh.
And probably my favourite, probably Princess Anne of all the ones I've met. Yeah, I was probably most honoured to meet her.
Is that right? And what was the circumstances?
She was coming to do something in Jamaica, and
did she get Major bumped? No, Cameron
get bumped. Yeah. In fact, they slept in the same bed, but we changed the sheets.
Nice woman.
Very nice lady, yeah. And again, she does the room. She goes round a room of people and talks to them all, Very, very good. Very professional. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again, and Clark, and hope we do your story justice when I edit it, and we'll get it out to you soon. All right, splendid. Thank you.